and it was an invitation that was not accepted. It is very important in situations like this to get all sides of the story, and at this point the question is what happened to Tshegofatso. All that his family wants to know, all that his loved ones want to know is what is the truth. So thank you so much for your time this evening.
It's my pleasure. I wish it was under happier circumstances.
Now, from your standpoint as the Justice Project South Africa, why is it that you are taking a keen interest in Tshego's situation and case and death?
Well, quite simply, the JMPD does not have a wonderful reputation for treating people with respect and respecting their constitutional rights and not engaging in outright thuggery. Just last month we had several Metro policemen sentenced to lengthy jail terms for much the same kind of behavior. And here we hear now, about a death resulting from this kind of behavior. I'm not prejudging the issue, obviously. I think that IPID must be given the opportunity to adequately investigate the situation. But for a person to pass away at the scene of their arrest, as allegedly happened, it does kind of point in the direction of some form of abuse.
You say at the scene of arrest. I'd like to, if I may, read the media statement that was released by the JMPD as they recount the events of that day. It's the media statement released by JMPD. It says, JMPD officers chased an Audi A5 for disregarding a red light at William Nicol and Sandton Drive on Saturday night. So the driver sped off, which resulted in a chase. The driver of the Audi collided with a curb and hit the vehicle and landed in a park. The driver was aggressive and resisted arrest because he was under the influence of alcohol. The statement continues to say the officers called for backup, and when more officers arrived, he was restrained and handcuffed. He was put inside a JMPD van, and the alleged suspect informed officers that he was struggling to breathe. They took him out of the van, and the officers called for an ambulance. When the ambulance arrived and upon patient assessment, they found that he had collapsed. Upon further medical assessment, the initial crew could not find signs of life and subsequently requested for advanced life support. With the arrival of advanced life support team, the alleged suspect was declared dead. The incident is currently being investigated by the Independent Police Investigative Directorate. Now, this happened on Saturday night, but they say he died on Sunday, unless if it's very early on Sunday morning, or it was the cusp between midnight and Sunday, because all of this, according to this, happened quite seamlessly. And I was hoping that the JMPD, would be here to be able to answer, questions such as that, the chronology of how everything transpired. But perhaps let's look at what you can talk to. As a South African citizen or a citizen or an individual, a human being on the road, what are your rights when you are stopped?
Okay, yeah. I'm glad you actually went into the further definition instead of as a South African citizen, because everybody in South Africa is equal before the law, and the Constitution applies to everybody in South Africa, whether they're a citizen or not. And fundamentally enshrined in our Constitution is the rule of law, not the rule by law. Okay, and there is a significant difference between the two. Everybody has the right to dignity. Everybody has the right to be treated fairly. Everybody has the right to a trial before an ordinary court. The police do not have the right to execute you at the roadside. And unfortunately, this is really what it does sound like, without prejudging the situation. I find it really peculiar that the JMPD says that the release says that they had to call in so many people for backup. Now, alcohol can make a person aggressive, but it cannot give them superhuman strength. And from the photograph of the deceased, it doesn't look to me like he resembles Arnold Schwarzenegger too closely. So why it would be necessary for more than 2 Metro police officers to bring this person under control is kind of beyond me.
And also to note the fact that he had actually been involved in an accident. So his car did hit the curb, which means that there's a likelihood of injury. So perhaps would that not be a time to maybe also call for an ambulance at the scene of the crime, because he has potentially injured himself. You know, the severity of that injury we do not know, but certainly it is a possibility.
Most certainly.
Now let's, go ahead.
And you know, if there was any reason to suspect injuries, they should have immediately called for medical assistance. And medical assistance in that area is very close and very quick.
So let's look at the other side of the story, that Tshegofatso was allegedly violent and needed to be restrained. I mean, how are the JMPD supposed to deal with individuals who are potentially violent even to them? In
terms of the Criminal Procedure Act, they may use the necessary amount of force, minimum force, to bring a person under control. Minimum force would be determined by reasonableness. So, for example, pulling out pepper spray as alleged by the family and emptying a can of it on a person is very different to pulling out pepper spray and dispersing 1 or 2 spurts of it, which is enough to basically subdue a suspect. There are all sorts of things that enter into this. Reasonable is the key word here. Reasonable force. And unfortunately, that is all too often not exercised. People go over the top. When I say people, law enforcement officials all over the world go over the top. And unfortunately, you end up with situations like this. And now, it's very simple. It's a matter of criminal investigation by IPID. And should they find that there is any form of criminal liability to be pursued here, they will refer that to the National Prosecuting Authority, and all of the officers concerned will be charged. And there's a likelihood that someone could be convicted of murder here.
And I think what's important here is also to get the facts straight, because we're getting, different accounts from different places. You're saying 1 bottle of pepper spray. The sister was also quoted as saying that somebody said that at least 3 of them had sprayed him. So I guess when you talk about a reasonable amount of force, the number of pepper spray cans used will also count in the investigation.
Pepper spray is a non-lethal solution under certain circumstances, used within the suggested and prescribed limitations. If you empty 1 bottle of pepper spray on a person, you are asking for trouble. If that person has a respiratory disorder to start with, you risk killing that person.
And this might have been the situation with Tshegofatso, in the sense that he said that he was battling to breathe, and that might have been as a result of the pepper spray, perhaps.
Well, once you've been pepper sprayed, trust me, it's not easy to breathe. I've got some in my car. If you like, I'll go and get it and we can spray it on someone here and see how happy they are with it.
Well, if you want to volunteer, you're most welcome.
No, absolutely not. I've been subjected to that in the past, and I can tell you now, it is very unpleasant. It makes it very difficult to breathe. It makes it impossible to see. And as I said, if that person has asthma, for example, it can trigger an asthma attack. If the person has some other form of respiratory disorder, it could kill them. So one needs to be conservative and be reasonable. Now, yes, witnesses have said that 3 people were pepper spraying the victim. Well, why is that sufficient? Why is that necessary? Trust me, pepper spray used by 1 person on another person is quite sufficient to subdue that person. And I can tell you now, I'm talking less than a 2-second burst.
And we'll leave it at that for this evening. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm sure that you, as the Justice Project, will be looking out for this. IPID is investigating this particular death, as we said. Do stay with us. This is News at Prime right here on Newsroom Africa, channel 405. After the break, over here. Thank you for staying with us. This is News at Prime. Now, before the break, I had released our guest, Mr. Howard Dembovsky from the Justice Project South Africa, but such an engaging conversation, and he's got a bit of time, so why don't we indulge ourselves and delve deeper into the rights of South Africans, of citizens, of any road user, as well as the responsibilities from the JMPD side. Thank you for agreeing to stay a little bit longer.
My absolute pleasure.
So let's take a look at the IPID investigation. Now, what are the issues or the aspects of this case that they will be focusing on, and what is the success rate that they've had traditionally?
IPID's success rate is spectacular, to be very honest with you. It's similar to any other form of criminal investigation. IPID is, if you like, a super police over the police. And they do their job thoroughly. So I don't think that anybody need have any concern that they're going to go and bury anything or anything like that. Their specific function is to police the police. So this will be a criminal investigation, forensics will be done, pathology will be done, and from that, witness statements will be taken. I'm led to believe that there were a number of witnesses to this particular incident, not just the family that arrived there. So those witnesses will be questioned, and they may possibly appear for the prosecution when the matter is referred to the National Prosecuting Authority and heads to court.
Now, Tshegofatso's sister says that she can confirm that her brother was actually at the scene and that he actually passed on due to physical injuries. Now, she's pleading with the JMPD officials to meet with the family and give them the breakdown of exactly what happened.
It has been confirmed that Chiro's autopsy reports do confirm that he died of unnatural causes, and this is due to physical injuries that he may have sustained. At this stage, we're not quite sure how he sustained those injuries, how did those come about. So yeah, I think this adds to the pain that the family is going through at this stage, is that we don't really know what my brother's final moments were like, and we are just appealing with the officials that were involved from the JMPD just to assist us in clarifying that moment for us, and exactly how did my brother get those injuries? How did he come to passing in this very vague setting that has been presented to us? And you know, if I had to appeal something on behalf of the family, if I may speak on behalf of the family, it's just, we would just like to know what really happened in those last few minutes. Please just help us understand, why did my brother have to die? And, you know, my brother was unarmed, and there are statements that the JMPD may have alluded to say that he was potentially under the influence. We do not know for certain. And even if that were the case, under the influence or not, was death the correct punishment? Did he really have to die? And even so, in the manner which he did.
A very heartbreaking and harrowing account there from the sister. But Howard, if you could inform us, what are our rights at the scene and at the point of being arrested?
Well, the first thing to understand is that you should never, ever resist arrest. Unfortunately, it's often used as an excuse by police who go overboard that the person was resisting arrest. But you should never, ever resist arrest. That's the first thing. Your rights, as I said, enshrined in the Constitution and enshrined in the Criminal Procedure Act, are that you be treated with dignity first and foremost. And that encompasses a broad spectrum of manners of behavior. They can't swear at you, they can't beat you up, they can't kick you, they can't pepper spray you, they can't assault you. If you are cooperating with them, as I said, they may use minimum force to subdue you if they have to. So don't resist arrest. That's the long and the short of it. You have the right to remain silent. When you are arrested, you have the right to consult with a legal representative of your choice. Never ever go and make statements to police without getting legal advice.
So at which point do you have the right to call your legal representative? Right there at the scene?
The second you're under arrest.
All right. So you don't have to be transported to any police station. You don't have to be taken into any place, into any van. You can call your legal representative right there and then.
Right then and there. Okay. Unfortunately, not many people have legal representatives on speed dial 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And very few lawyers answer their phone after 5 o'clock. However, there are lawyers that do that exact thing. But you have the right, once you're in police detention, to be visited by your family. You have the right to medical attention if you need it. You have the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Okay.
A lot of what you're saying here relies on evidence.
Yes.
I mean, what about the use of body cams? Because I think one could find themselves in a situation where it's a he said, she said.
Always.
You know, my account versus what the officer's account is. What is the law and the regulation in South Africa as far as the use of body cams for the JMPD or any member of the police are concerned?
The police are not required to use them, and I know of no police or law enforcement entity in South Africa that wears body cams.
Do you think they should?
Are we not in the 21st century? I'm sorry for answering the question with a question, but this is something that has become a worldwide policing practice, precisely because you can have instances where people cry foul of the treatment that they receive from the police, but vice versa. People get abused by police officials every single day.
And what about the use of cell phones? Surely, you know, we see it now specifically on social media where South Africans, where people are using cell phones to record what is happening at that time. And oftentimes you'll find that the police officers are resistant to being recorded. What are the rights of commuters? What are the rights of individuals to record situations and scenarios that may be compromising for them?
There's nothing in the law that prohibits it. Policemen who say that there is are lying. Okay, their obvious motive for lying is because they have been recorded engaging in criminal activities. Okay, now any criminal is going to object to being filmed, let's be honest. And unfortunately, when that criminal wears a badge and carries a gun, it becomes all the more serious. And but the fact is, it's not prohibited by law. It is admissible in court, provided that you do not tamper with the video material.
So it is admissible in court?
It is.
And should the law enforcement officer say, no, you're not allowed to record me, you can state that it is my right?
Yes, but, and this is the distinction that I find myself drawing all the time. There's a difference between your rights, your constitutional rights, which are very pretty in our Constitution, and what happens in practice. Because, trust me, when the person who's abusing your rights is doing so, they have no respect for the Constitution, and you have no way of enforcing your constitutional rights. That is the problem. And believe it or not, there is not one single offense in terms of the Constitution. Not one. The Constitution is the only law in South Africa that does not prescribe offenses and penalties. So you can violate my constitutional rights, and yes, I can take action in court afterwards because you violated my constitutional rights. But it is not a de facto criminal offense, and in my view, it should be.
Otherwise, it renders all other laws and all other rights null and void if that key one is actually not enforceable.
Well, the Constitution is the overriding legislation of South Africa. It's the supreme law of South Africa. And as I say, I find it peculiar that there are no offences and penalties in terms of the Constitution.
Now, is that something that you are able to rally for, the fact that there ought to be rights that are enforceable?
Well, you know, I think that South Africans have been very naive about the Constitution. If you ask most South Africans, they don't have a clue what is actually contained in the Constitution. So it's very difficult to enforce your rights if you don't know what they are. And the first thing I would do is urge everybody to get hold of a copy of the Constitution and read and understand it. And if you don't understand it, go and ask somebody who does to explain it to you, specifically with respect to your human rights as is contained in the Bill of Rights. That's the first thing. I do believe that some of the laws that we have in South Africa do pay mind to the Constitution and do create offences. However, not all of the human rights that are enshrined in the Constitution are protected by other legislation. And as I said, it's not a criminal offence in terms of the actual Constitution itself to violate your constitutional rights. And I really, really firmly believe that it should be.
It sounds to me like a loophole, something that should be addressed, because that is actually what makes all the other rights enforceable. But I do thank you so much for your time this evening.
Yeah, just one last thing. The honeymoon is over. Read the Constitution, understand it, and let's stop talking about how wonderful our Constitution is if we really don't understand what's contained in it. And law enforcement officials, over and above everything, have a duty to uphold the Constitution before any other law.
Howard, thank you so much for your time.